Hello and welcome to this demo of the adversary simulation project. Thanks for checking this out. If you're finding this on GitHub, we have built this as a port of the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator into Splunk, as well as some other functionality that leverages Phantom and additional Splunk dashboards to build a whole simulation harness for various adversary techniques. So what we're looking at here is the actual up and running adversary simulation harness. Once you follow the procedure down below on this GitHub page of instructions on how to install it, or use the online Terraform AWS configuration that should just be a one touch and go, you'll be presented with this once you log into your Splunk interface. So obviously this is the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator that you can hover over any of the techniques and see certain notes. Functionality included in here is quite a bit, actually. You can use the additional layers if you want to create a new layer, open an existing layer pointing to an existing project, etc. What just happened there is this is actually set to auto refresh, so you can turn this off or back on, and this will be useful once we start updating the color scheme here, and you'll see what I mean in just a second. So let's say I want to actually run a test. I can find a particular technique that I want to run, and this is all powered by Red Canary's Atomic Red Team project. So let's say, for example, looking at this registry run key startup folder, the first thing I might want to do is view the executor that is listed on Atomic Red Team GitHub site. This will actually pull up the YAML file that lists the commands that are actually being run in this particular test. So this is useful to understand what tests you have available to you and what they're actually doing on your machine. Notice that there are some that are grayed out. This means that currently they don't have a Atomic Red Team executor for that particular test. Okay, so now that we've explored what that actually is, let's go down and say run this test. So when I select this option after right-clicking on a particular test, this will open a new tab and a different dashboard in Splunk in this same instance. It will pre-populate the technique name, the ID, the playbook name that we're going to be running in Phantom, which is always going to be modular simulation. And then we select the Phantom server. Again, if you're using the detection lab setup, you should have one named Detect Lab Phantom. If you did your own setup, you'll have it whatever you want it to be named. Then you have the assets. Again, pre-populated these three for the detection lab setup. Whatever you choose to name your attack assets will be populated here. At this point, you can go through and say, I want to select SSE detection searches that are mapped to certain MITRE techniques. SSE is Splunk Security Essentials, a pre-built package of content that includes ways to start using Splunk for security and a lot of pre-built searches there as well. This tab will include other saved searches on your environment. So one of the things I like to do, because this includes Olaf Hartong's threat hunting app and all the searches there, I like to type the technique ID that I'm about to test and find the matching searches that Olaf provides. Select one of those, and then change this to whichever one of these pieces you're going to be using. In this case, we're using the other saved searches for detection, so I select that. Notice that there's also the ESCU detection search. This is useful for isolating enterprise security content update searches that are provided by Splunk's security research team. All right, so in this case, once you select some of these things, it should just kick off automatically. If it doesn't, there's the submit button for you. So what we have here is the host name that it ran on, which in this case, this is the destination IP hard-coded per detection lab. And then you'll start to see a Phantom posted event that matches the GUID for this test, right? So the request payload is the GUID. This is how we identify this unique test that's being run. You'll notice that we should get the started message there that actually has come back from Phantom, but we probably won't see any more until we refresh it. So this is going to be a key piece of what you want to do is after you wait 30 seconds to a minute, refresh it until you see the started and finished. If you have any errors along the way, you should get a message in here that gives you more insight. But in the short term, we have this started red team test and finished red team test, which tells us that we should have completed successfully. All right, so then we scroll down further, we'll notice that we have a detection search panel. Now this corresponds to the detection search that we've provided here, either from the other saved searches, SSE or ESCU, and the appropriate selection that we made here. So now we get to see the detection search that we've pulled in. And this is the one, again, provided by Olaf Hartong's threat hunting app, which has a lot of great searches mapped to specific MITRE ATT&CK techniques. We can actually see which events matched against this search. So this is very useful. Again, the specific technique that we did, in this case, T1060, registry run keys startup folder, actually goes in and modifies certain registry keys that correspond to the run, which starts up when a machine reboots, right? Common technique used for persistence. So we see a bunch of events here, and we can scroll over to the right to see, oh, what is being put in that registry key? In run once next run, we see there's a PowerShell that goes out to try to download something. Ooh, that's not a good thing to show up in a registry key, right? Which is what we wanted to validate. So it looks like this detection provided by Olaf is a pretty good one for finding things that show up in the registry run key. You'll notice that there are a couple extra events that we may want to prune out as we go through this, but it's helpful. Another thing to note is a different dashboard panel. I've got the Olaf rule detect events. So Olaf built a sysmon configuration that includes a lot of what we call rule names that correspond to MITRE ATT&CK techniques. Again, these are useful because this is basically metadata that comes in with the sysmon event that says, hey, what's been done and what's recorded in this particular sysmon event matches what we believe to be technique T1060 from MITRE ATT&CK. So we can see there's a few with some key information. This is not all that's contained in these sysmon events, and you'll see lower down below that there's more data there, but this is just highlighting that I did get some rule matches to the particular technique I'm looking for inside of the window. So that brings me to a good point I didn't mention. It's important to have the start and finish event for this panel because this sets your time start and finish. So it looks at 5105 and 5157 as the start and end time, and that's necessary for the rest of these panels to populate. So if you haven't refreshed this to show both starting and ending event, none of the other panels on the dashboard will populate correctly. It's important to note. As we scroll down further, these are all the sysmon registry events that happened during the time frame. So we can see there's a couple that have details that are interesting, others that are doing some stuff with root certificates that may or may not be interesting, right? This is cool because this is decoded PowerShell events. And what I mean by decoded is every time we go out and run a PowerShell command on a host, we're using Phantom and the Windows Remote Management app. This causes all of our commands to be encoded in base 64. Which is sometimes used as a technique by adversaries and is sometimes something we want to detect on. So it's important for us to recognize that our plumbing may cause some interesting idiosyncrasies. But in the short term, this shows all the interesting commands. Then there's also command.exe commands from events during the test time, sysmon file create events, and then all the sysmon events that happen during that test time. So again, this can help you in various stages for figuring out what things you want to make your detection on, right? So in this case, we have a good detect. We have events that showed up in our detection search. So we're going to say we can detect multiple sub-techniques here. Now, when I click this, because I've got auto refresh set in my settings, this actually turns blue, right? Let's say, for example, though, that I didn't have the data to detect this. I wasn't even getting sysmon or registry events. If I marked that as needs data, it would turn red back here on my attack board. But because we actually are detecting multiple sub-techniques, this is going to turn blue. So that's the basics of how you would want to use this. Again, going through and right-clicking, running tests, filling in the requisite data, running it through the simulation, validating that your detection search worked. If it does, great, mark it. If it doesn't, say you need something, and then go modify your detection search until you get it working the way you want and detecting the events that happened from your simulation. I hope that's helpful. More information, if you need to reset the colors on your layer, it's under the overview, and then the project home page is back to the GitHub where you likely found this demo video. Hope that's been enjoyable for you, and thanks for watching.